Hello and welcome to today's codebook tutorial. Today we're going to be discussing the library editor. To open the library editor, select Build and Library Editor. Note that the codebook will now ask you for a password, as many of these functions could cause large changes to the project. Codebook will also ask you for your initials so we know who made the edits to the equipment library. We can now see Codebook's centrally managed equipment library. Every component for AutoCAD, MicroStation, Bentley Architecture, Revit need to be listed and scheduled from within the Codebook Library Editor. We use the Library Editor tool to associate metadata with a Revit family or AutoCAD or MicroStation object. We're now going to take a quick tour around the Library Editor. So we're going to select the Summary tab, and this contains basic information for the object, such as its database ID, the BIM name, the availability of the Revit family, the group, the classification, and the code. Now we can have 4 unique coding systems for every single item of equipment. We also have the description, and once again we have 4 unique descriptions for every single item of equipment. So you could have a French description and an English description. We also have the height, length, depth, and these are all derived from the BIM model. And we also have a fixed height. This object should be inserted into the Revit model, AutoCAD drawing, or MicroStation drawing. If we move over to the Detail tab now, we can see that we can select its group, its classification, and also supplied, installed, and maintained data. We can also specify a specification code, and we can code the 4 unique coding systems for this particular object. We can also see the unit cost and the base unit cost. So we can assign an item of equipment a cost and produce reports based on that information. We can now see the service requirement for this particular item of equipment. For purchase information, dimensions, finishes, FF+E notes, manufacturer information, range, model, special instructions, and supplier information. We can also see facilities management information such as life expectancy, service intervals, and we can also see an extended description for each item of equipment. The standard description is limited to 255 characters. However, if you need an additional description, use the extended description field. If we move on to the revisions tab now, we can see the date this was created, the date the graphic was modified, and the date the textual data was modified. If we amend or make any edits to this item of equipment, it's good practice to leave a revision note. We can also attach files and documentation, such as service manuals, to each and every item of equipment in the Codebook library. So a Codebook library really becomes a hub of all the FF+E information, and we can use any of this data to actually pass that to the Revit model. So any Codebook data such as description, code, service information, cost information can be passed to that instance of the object in Revit as a shared parameter. We can also see that in this particular item we only have a 3D view. However, Codebook will generate a plan view, a left view, and a right view for these items of equipment as well. The Codebook equipment library is based on 3 equipment types: components, which represent a single static item of equipment; a union, such as a set of shelves or an intensive cot care space, that represents a grouping of statically arranged items of equipment; and assemblies that represents a predetermined layout or group of equipment. So in this case, we have an assembly laid out for an ensuite bathroom. So someone has created an ensuite bathroom in AutoCAD or Revit, decided that they quite like this positional layout, and they've committed this back to the Codebook database. This has been committed as an assembly, so I can then insert the assembly again and be sure that I will get the same positional layout and the same items of equipment each and every time. It's a great way to set up exemplar rooms, so you know what should be in that room, and also a best case layout for those particular groupings of items. If we move back to components now, we're going to very briefly show you how to add a new item of equipment to the codebook library. So we're going to select the option to library add without graphics. We could also copy the current item if we want to do a new variant of that item, but we're going to choose the without graphics option. We can see now Codebook's inserted a completely new record for us, so we can assign its group, its classification, we can give it a code, and we can also give it a description. Now at the moment this only exists as an item of equipment inside Codebook. It's not linked to a BIM graphic as of yet. To link it to a BIM graphic, we can choose the option to library update with family or using RFA file. So we can now associate this with a family in our current Revit project or using an RFA file, a Revit family somewhere on your network or on your PC. If we choose the option with family, Codebook will now ask us to associate this item of equipment with this Revit family. So we click on the Revit family, and we can now move back to Codebook, and we can see that it's generated our thumbnails from this particular item of equipment. Now when we use the option to insert, Codebook will recognize this item of equipment is loaded and then reinsert it into the Revit model. That's a very simple way of adding items of equipment to the Codebook library, and in an individual way, very useful. However, if we have 500 or 600 items of equipment we wish to associate, the batch add functions, which we're going to cover in a later tutorial, will be much better suited. Now we can see we have a number of items of equipment here that are no description defined. These have been added by mistake to this Codebook library. It's impossible to delete items of equipment from a Codebook library because they may have been placed and we still want to schedule that information even if it's incorrect. So what we can actually do is hide items, and we can hide the current item or batch update and hide multiple items. If we have a batch load of descriptions or information we also wish to edit in the equipment library, opposed to working through these on a singular basis, so find your item of equipment, update your description or update your requirement, we can choose the option to library batch update descriptions, and Codebook will output an Excel file of the current equipment library. We can then easily and quickly make our modifications in Excel, such as perhaps changing our groups, changing our classes, changing a description, save that Excel file, close, then update, and that will re-import that Codebook information. That concludes our very basic tutorial on the equipment library. There will be a number of other tutorials based on the Codebook equipment library. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions please contact support@codebookinternational.com. Thank you.